Well, hello, and welcome to Gallifrey's Most Wanted. I'm Ross Aiken. I'm Old Who.
And I'm here again.
Hey, Jeff. Folks,
Hello.
Jeff is in back-to-back episodes for good reason, because they are his two favorite stories. So we're going to go to the rescue. The Rescue, Serial L. Writer, David Whitaker. Director, Christopher Barry. Producer, Verity Lambert. Script editor, Dennis Spooner. Originally aired January 2nd to January 9th, 1965. The Doctor lands on the planet Dido in the year 2493. He finds a crashed spaceship from Earth with two survivors, a paralyzed man named Bennett and a young girl, Vicki. Bennett tells the Doctor that the rest of the crew have been murdered by the locals, and Vicki says a native named Coquillion is protecting them from further wrath of the enraged Didonians. The Doctor is suspicious of these explanations and challenges Coquillion to find out that he is Bennett in disguise. Bennett confessed that he murdered all the spaceship crew and the friendly Didonians to conceal a murder he had previously committed on the spaceship. He had planned to take Vicki, she is unaware of his crimes, back to Earth to testify to his innocence. However, terrified by two Didonian survivors, Bennett plunges over a cliff to his death. The Doctor offers Vicki a chance to join his crew, and she accepts. Another amazing synopsis from the trusty Doctor Who program guide, The Complete Guide to Every Doctor Who Story by Jean-Marc the Officer. Anybody who listens to this podcast has listened to me and Jeff talk about Hartnell, Doctor Who. We have talked about The Rescue.
Yeah. I mean, it's just such a formative story. To sort of go behind the scenes a little bit, I recorded an episode with Doctor Who Literature with Jason last week. And guess what story we talked about?
The Rescue.
The Rescue. It's just a coincidence that they've come up together. I promise I will give someone else a chance to talk about The Rescue at some point. But I just love it, and I love it for so many different reasons. And I think Jason, when I spoke to him, alluded to the fact that this is a story of many firsts.
Yeah, that I was talking about it. Me and Leslie were walking the dogs, and I said I was recording with you, and she goes, "What are you recording about?" And I said, and I was telling about this is so formative. It's the first new companion. It's the first after changing the dynamic of that they want to be traveling. You know, they're the willing travelers now.
Yeah, and it's also the change in the Doctor where
But
he then becomes your front and center hero of the piece.
Yes, it is, and and part of that is the change in the dynamic of the cast. A lot of it has to do with that, and that's I even talked to Leslie about that, but I don't want to jump to that part yet because it is a part you and me will probably gab a bit about. I think the story, I wanted to look at it a little bit about just the story as a Doctor Who story without all the stuff I've glommed onto it, because it is one of my favorite. I think it is a near perfect Doctor Who story. It is the absolute perfect length. There's no filler. The guest cast is just what you need. The sets are just what you need. Shot like a play, but it's still a good science fiction story. And the character work between the five of them is spot on. I can't think of many Doctor Who's where everybody in the cast is at the same level, and it's a very high level. Because I think I was watching it on my pad while I was cooking my breakfast, watching the back end where the Doctor confronts Bennett in Coquillion's costume. Yeah, and I was just thinking about that costume, and it's on this new pad my buddy gave me. He gave me a really good sized pad, hand-me-down. I was watching on that, so it was like basically the same size as a 1960s TV screen, very freaking small. And the costume is even then looks a little like a costume you know what I mean? Like a theatrical costume. But the story's so well done. acting their butts off. William Hartnell is the guy playing Bennett, who's in that uncomfortable costume, just has to hold himself a certain way, and because Hartnell knows he's acting to the guy in the costume and doing a real scene, you buy it, and it just works. And the sets are pretty, yes, they're rudimentary, they're 1960 sets, but it's a really good. It's just a good. I just think it's almost flawless.
That Hall of Judgment set is one of my favourite things ever because it's so dark and yeah, it's just black drapes basically to fill out the walls of the space.
They've just probably thrown them over top of something and.
But it's smoky, it's spooky, it's atmospheric, it's got real great depth into the set as well. So when we open that scene and we're close up on Hartnell and he's looking away from the rest of the set, and then Quillian enters right in the background through the door and Hartnell's with his back to him, that scene is just so powerful. Because of the way it's shot, it's lit, it's directed, it just looks gorgeous, and the way it's performed.
I think it's some of the best acting in early Who. I think, and I think Bill Hartnell is an incredibly good actor. I went back when I found out who he was, and I had seen the one about the rugby player. And
yes,
and No Time.
This Sporting Life.
The Sporting, yeah, it's a really powerful movie, and it is a very sensitive, Jeff. This is a guy that just does it. His character's a little broken. He's not a bad person, but he's as lonely as he's lonely, and him glomming onto this guy, and not in a bad way, but it's the furthest thing from Hartnell I could think of as of a human being in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But he's so good, and no, not saying anything bad about Carol Ann Ford. I think the chemistry of Maureen O'Brien and William Hartnell is such another level.
There is definitely a difference there, and it is much more grandfatherly, granddaughterly a relationship from pretty much their very first scene together. They are just playing up to each other and bringing the best out of each other. And I've often said the reason I love Vicki so much is because she brings the best out of the Doctor. But that is equally as true and probably comes out on screen because Maureen O'Brien is bringing the best out of William Hartnell.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it. Leslie probably had no idea. She was just probably being a good, dutiful wife and listening. But I was trying to explain that the complexity of that William Hartnell, the actor, and William Hartnell, the man, being a little insecure. He really didn't like change. He didn't like, he wasn't sure. And Maureen O'Brien, being a strong person, I told her the story too about, when they said, "Would you dye your hair black?" She goes, "Then why did you just keep Carol Ann on?
Yeah.
Why are you hiring me?" And, but she read the room, she knew who Hartnell was, probably got some pointers from the others, and was so sweet to him. She wanted him, I think in a lot of ways we're seeing it's her going, I want him to feel safe with me. And and because I think they stand closer, there's this thing that they do as two characters, and I think it's the actors doing it. Whenever they get in to talk, they're a little bit closer.
Like thick as thieves.
Yeah, they're like, she's got her shoulder inside his little chest. She's always leaning into him. And there are a lot of scenes with them being very devious, too. You could see when they're, oh, my God. Them in the Romans.
In the Romans.
Oh, my God.
Exactly where you're going.
I love the Romans. When this and that came out on DVD and in a VHS, I was like, oh, I don't think I was so happy because as much as I love this, I think I love the Romans almost as much. I think it's the best comedy they ever did.
Yeah, and Maureen then goes on to basically very quickly become William Hartnell's wrangler behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I think that part of it is your acting buddy. I think you do that.
She said it was her job to laugh him out of his temper tantrums, which he would have at least 3 times a day. And it was her job to just basically break him out of that
and
with
I think
humour.
Do you think some of that's coming out on the screen?
I think that just pours out on the screen. I think the reason they work so well together is solely because of the relationship they have all of the rest of the time. Because you think about it, what we see on the screen is only 45 minutes work normally in a filming session. They get an hour and a half maybe to film a 25-minute episode, if that. 45 minutes. It's not a lot of time.
Yeah.
But the rest of that week they are rehearsing, they are blocking, they're doing all of that in preparation for recording almost as live the episodes that we see transmitted. So the rest of that week, they're just forming that bond behind the scenes, and they're working out little bits of things that they can do with each other on screen and fleshing out those moments. It's so vital to what we finally get on screen, and it backs up why what we see on the screen is so... People might pick holes in William Hartnell fluffing lines and what have you, but that doesn't matter because it's all so accomplished and it's all so believed in and so true.
Yeah. Sorry, my wife is staring at me with a weird grin. So
I suspect a new pet on your horizon.
No. Yeah.
Can I set it for delivery? It's through Instacart.
Yes, whatever.
Anytime today?
Anytime today.
Okay. I'm going to take Truby. I don't know if I didn't ask Sarah about bringing her home, but she didn't say to me to take her home. So my assumption is I'm bringing her back.
All right.
But I'll let you know if that's not the case.
Cool.
Okay. Goodbye.
Bye. All right. You were just talking about Maureen O'Brien. Yeah, I think their chemistry is really it comes from the thing that actors do. I mean, actors bond very quickly because they have to do it over and over and over again. I've been done tons of shows. Sometimes you meet your new best friend. Other times you're like, oh my God, it's horrible. But you develop relationships, and talking about actors with chemistry. Their chemistry, O'Brien and Hartnell's chemistry is just amazing, and it adds to the chemistry that he already has with William Russell and Jacqueline Hill. That Vicki's folds right into this quartet. I think there are certain times where Doctor Who has a stretch of great stuff. And I think from Maureen here to the Chase is even except maybe the Space Museum is pretty good. I mean, it's top of the line.
But the Space Museum has Vicki crying for revolution, and
that's my favorite. But that is my favorite part of it.
There's a lot to love in the Space Museum. There's a lot to love in every single story. It's people may say, yeah, but the Web Planet's there. But the Web Planet is absolutely fantastic.
Yes, it is.
Probably a couple of episodes too long, maybe some would say, because it is a very off-the-wall concept.
Yeah.
But it's bringing multiple different alien species to life. It's telling a story where the main cast are your only humanoid representation on screen
and we've not seen that again, even to today.
No. I mean, there's a reason for that, and that's also the Web Planet. But I think the Web Planet deserves a massive reappraisal, and I think it's about time Doctor Who did something that weird again, and stopped playing it safe within its own format, which I think modern Doctor Who has a tendency to do. They know their format and they play within those bounds. Yes, there's a lot of scope within those bounds, But here in the 60s, they are pushing every
it's
single
never more
boundary constantly.
This is one of the most experimental seasons for a lot of reasons. One, bringing back an old monster. That was a big deal in this the story before. Wow, you brought back losing a companion, then getting a new companion, then having the last two of the original companions leave, and you get yet another one. And we're going to see that this is the show has found its way. Oh, we don't have to end the show when we lose cast members as long as we have our Doctor.
And that will serve them in very good stead in just a couple of years' time,
because
where
when they
it does become apparent that Hartnell can't carry on as he has been.
Yeah.
But it's crazy if you think about it. Dalek Invasion of Earth was the end of the first season, effectively, but it wasn't, because they held it over for transmission. But that was the first time all of the cast had a break at the same time. So when they come back to record The Rescue, they've just had 6 or 7 weeks holiday. Which, if you think about it, throughout that first season run, you only get a couple of episodes each time where your cast members are off. Jacqueline Hill comes back with a very nice tan in the Sensorites. Hartnell comes back in Keys of Marinus to save the day when Ian's being tried for murder. So you get these moments where your cast member comes back and they're refreshed and they're rejuvenated.
Yeah.
All of them had this opportunity with The Rescue, and I think that shows on screen as well, that there's a bit more buoyance to all of their performance.
Because they just did almost 56. They did like 52 episodes without a break, except at Christmas or something. And that's why they did it, and then they saved the Planet of Giants and this for the next season. Yeah. So we'll be ahead of the game. So when you come back, we won't be as rushed. We're going to do a few less episodes.
And you can have a nicer, longer break altogether. And that's perfect, because they're all frayed by the end of it, I think. It's quite an arduous process filming Doctor Who in the 1960s.
I don't know what was... I guess if Dalek was shot last, I think they're spot on that. Though it doesn't, I don't ever see. I bet they were exhausted. But
if you think how heightened the tension is in Dalek Invasion of Earth, it's the perfect story for them to be at that state of we've been doing this for months on end, for a year, and so by the end of Dalek Invasion of Earth, they are all frayed as characters anyway. So it just plays into that performance, and it makes it that much more believable.
Yeah, I think I agree with that so much. It's the Dalek one too, because I've had this thing with my love of black and white Dalek stories. Chase was my first love. That was the one that went, okay, now I get it, and I don't mind the hokey shit with the museum and all that stuff, but I really like it. And I always kind of thought less of Dalek Invasion of Earth. And I've come to reassess that, and I would put that. I still love the chase. But I've reevaluated that Dalek one because of what it is doing in progression of this. The first 2 years of this show were magical in a lot of ways because they were trying all these things. I think when we get to the third season, they're getting ready for a change.
Yes, and they're working out their format as well. But here in The Rescue and all around The Rescue, we're still very much in the tail end of that embryonic stage. This is the only thing filmed, or this is the first thing filmed from a second season block. And so it's still feeling its way, and it's working out what kind of stories it can tell. And in here, we have a murder mystery which some would cynically say isn't much of a mystery when you only have a couple of characters dotting around. But that's on the assumption that Quillian isn't a character in his own right,
Yeah.
which we're told he is. I watched this with my daughters and their boyfriends, and just as we get to that Hall of Justice scene, my eldest pipes up and goes, "It's the guy with the beard, the funny-looking thing." So the penny dropped at exactly the moment that it's supposed to drop for her. Because as your viewer, you want to reach your conclusion just before or just as your main character does as a viewer. And so in that regard, it actually works.
Yeah, it does. And what I think it's like you've come back from a long break, grueling, you've got new cast member, you got to introduce her, you got it set up. So let's do our most economical episode.
Mm-hmm.
We will have the 4 regulars, 1 speaking bad guy, and then 2 people who just cross, we're just going to treat it like a play, and it is a murder mystery. It is a mystery, and I remember I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And most of the episode guide things were in magazines, and they had like 3 sentences, so nothing could be given away. But it's just them going, can we do a simple mystery? And just put it in a science fiction setting. Instead of having to tell science fiction stories like Keys and Moranis, which the Daleks, all the other ones. Yes, it's set in space. Yes, it's set in the future. Yes, there's time travel. But it's just, this could be a shipwreck on an island. You know what I mean? It's just a story about these people. Yeah. And it works perfectly as that, and it's so well directed. And I also want to shout out, because we haven't yet, because it is written by David Whittaker.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that doesn't, and I think he knew exactly what he was doing. All the parts were in the right spot.
He is responsible for shaping and moulding these characters that we see over the preceding years' worth of Doctor Who. He is the guy. Yes, we have the characters being created. Yes, we have the stories being commissioned and what have you. But really, what's important is the way that our characters interact with one another. And I think David Whittaker was very, very heavily responsible for those quieter character moments that we see. Those relationships from one of tension to one of friendship. And that he, I think, moulded that development over the first season, and we continue to see that in the rescue as he tackles the issue of introducing someone new to this dynamic that he's been so heavily involved with for a year. He's the perfect person to write the rescue.
Yeah, and basically, even I want to talk about introducing Vicki, but there is that wonderful scene with at the beginning inside the TARDIS where the Doctor has fallen asleep, and Whittaker gives them all those, like, it's Nathan Bottomley when he's talking about no, it's someone else. There's a comic writer goes when he wants to read a superhero team book, he wants to see the office cooler. He wants to see what these people that work together do behind the scenes. What are they to each other? What is the thing? And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing that water cooler moment because we're just landing. We're not in the adventure. Why is he napping? And it's very funny. David Whittaker gives the Doctor some jokes. He thinks he's the Doctor being teasing and being funny.
Yeah. But also I think what he's very cleverly done then is in a very simple and non-verbal way communicated the fact that the Doctor leaving Susan behind has caused him great trauma and depression. Yeah. And he does this visually, and he does this with the line, by having the Doctor sleep through the TARDIS landing. Depression makes us want to sleep through a lot of stuff, and I think that is a clear indicator of the Doctor's grief and depression at having left Susan behind. He then references Susan by name as he asks her to open the door, and then Barbara has to step in because she knows
Oh, yeah.
She knows that is the one thing he didn't want to do and didn't want to let on.
Yeah.
Because that tells us far more about the Doctor's grief than a massive long speech at a living son or anything like that. That's not to say that that's not a bad thing either, but I think economy of writing can go a long way.
I
and
agree.
Just by the Doctor having name drop Susan, that tells us everything we need to know as a viewer.
And I think for Whittaker it goes against the early tradition of television. Like, you have a great reset at the end of every episode, so nothing in the previous story has any ramification on you. And they would just ignore the fact. It's like we joke about Adric dies and then they're all okay 25 seconds later. But in this one, Whittaker goes, I can't spend much time on the loss of Susan. So let's show the loss of Susan through a couple beats.
Yeah.
And it builds character. Jacqueline Hill, again, they're all just grooving. They're all like it. There's even when they're not saying things, they're all just. It's just. I love the performances. It really struck me this last time I watched it. It was like, man, there's no filler in this. There's none. The dodgy monster dog pet. That section, it's like, that it's the only thing that sometimes takes me out of it. But I always get mad at Barbara. I always am fucking pissed off at her.
And that's important because that is our forced sort of inter-character drama that carries us through the bones of the rest of the episode, and it makes Vicki wary of these newcomers. They aren't just saviors. They don't come in as saviors because, yes, she's rescued Barbara and Barbara seems lovely, but she's also capable of killing something like Sandy, and that puts Vicki then on the back foot, and it gives her a chance to, I don't know if Maureen O'Brien was ever asked to perform as many emotional ranges ever again, really. But in The Rescue, she goes through the whole gamut of every emotion you can feel. And it's there to make her wary of these possible saviors.
Yeah. Now that you're saying that about all the emotions, because there's an energy that she has at the beginning, her first couple scenes, until she meets the other people. There's that buzz of, if anybody's has anxiety, either you're the person, like when I have bad anxiety, if someone else is going a little too fast, like moving about their day a little too fast, it freaks me out. It's like you're vibrating. Whoa, nope, can't deal with this today. And
different energy.
And they don't do anything bad. It's just like you're just vibrating at a way faster speed than I am willing to comprehend. And I kind of see that. I firmly believe Maureen O'Brien is thinking about, we're going to be rescued. We've been trapped. It's just the two of everybody we're on the ship with is dead. What's going on in her head? She just wants, and then that she had made a friend with this animal and had a pet, and Barbara killing it shows all the grief. She's just, it's on top of everything else. She's, we're talking the Doctor's grief, Vicki's grief. She, I always kind of remembered her always being this spunky girl, and it's like, no, she starts off this episode unsettled. What's going on? It's very, and throughout it, and until they take her, that really, and she goes on with him. I think it's about both, and I think that probably helped Hartnell and her bond, because they're playing a lot of the same emotional beats.
Yeah, and I love the way the Doctor calms Vicki down and rationalises Barbara's killing of Sandy and gets her back on side. He does such a good job, and he does it not with admonishment, although there is a little admonishment in there, but not a stern admonishment. More of a reassuring admonishment, and he does it by reassuring her and bringing her back to them and away from Bennett, really, and away from the situation, by saying, look, we're here, we know what we're doing, we can get this sorted. Yes, we've made some mistakes, but it was a mistake.
Yeah.
And it was done for what we thought was your perceived danger and your benefit. So he's very, very cleverly sort of manipulates Vicki back into the fold, but it's done with kindness, and it's done with a genuine reason to as well. He needs to bring Vicki back in, and it also gives us this chance to see the Doctor getting happier again, because he's found someone to fill those Susan shoes all of a sudden, someone he can take under his wing, because that's all the Doctor really wants is someone under their wing that they can look after and protect and share the universe with.
Yeah, and you just saying that out loud made me think about that, and that's kind of what we see in every companion, no matter what kind of relationship, whether it's because it works on different levels. You see with actors. Patrick Troughton and his crew are very much the little giggly family.
Yes.
Tom Baker and Elizabeth Sladen, it's best friends. Katie, the Doctor's a little too paternalistic to her, but he respects her a great deal and loves her. You know what I mean? It's a good and you'll see it in that. I mean, the Doctor and Leela, or Tennant and Tate. That is a good where they're best friends.
Yes.
Yaz and the 13th Doctor.
That turns into something more with Yaz and 13, but it also starts from a very pure place of, I like you, I want to travel with you. And that's really all you need to be a Doctor Who companion, is I like you and I want to travel with you. That's why Mel's so refreshing when she comes in, because she likes the Doctor and wants to travel with him. After Tegan being kidnapped effectively, and Nyssa only being there because she's got nothing left on Traken, and then Traken is destroyed, and Adric stowing away just to get away from things, and then all of them resenting being there at certain points. I don't think Nyssa does, really.
No.
But
and I think
she's
it's why
also
Davison
only
will say
there because she
Davison
has
said
nothing else.
she would be the best single one, is because I think he just never had to play that awful. Because it gets forced,
And then poor Perry and the Sixth Doctor, their relationship starts so poorly, and despite the actors' best efforts to try and soften everything that was written for them, it's a very fractious relationship. So when Mel turns up, she's a breath of fresh air, and I think that's more what I vibe with, is a happier Doctor companion relationship, and a more platonic one that comes from kindness and warmth and looking for family.
Yeah, that's why I think my favorite ones are the ones where they're just his mate, they're just his best friend.
Yeah.
I think it works.
I think that works.
I think that works a lot better. I think, and there's no other reason. It's not. And Vicki is she's from the future, so that she could talk some of the Doctor's language like Susan could, because you needed to have more than him. Then poor William Hartnell would be explaining all the sci-fi crap all the time. But it's as the show goes along, sometimes they go, let's do the mod girl. They did it twice with Katie Manning and Elizabeth Sladen. You know what I mean? The sci-fi stuff in the later years, where there were times where none of his companions were from Earth or from the present. And
I like that.
I wish there was some of that in modern.
I mean, if you look at Vicki, Zoe, Leela to a degree, even though she isn't futuristic in her outlook, she is from the future.
Yeah.
And Adric, again, I don't have the same hatred for Adric that a lot of fandom seems to have. I quite like Adric because I was a young boy at the time that he was the companion. So he made sense to me. Yeah. It made sense that he was there. But there have been throughout Doctor Who's history characters from the future who fit in perfectly well and can then simplify the Doctor's explanation for other companions like Zoe and Jamie. There's an intermediary then. So you have Zoe, who is human. She's not an alien like the Doctor, but she can then also sort of bring Jamie up to speed in a much more direct and simple way than the Doctor ever could, because he is so alien and so far advanced from where Jamie's from. Not that Jamie needs much. He knows what to do.
Yeah.
He knows what to do.
You see, also I like this is still an era too where they're going to and fro in history. We still got a few more historicals, and I would have liked more companions from the past. I think Jamie works. Leela does the same thing. It's the same thing. The person who comes from a privilege, but far more primitive. And I think, and the more I watch those Louise Jameson ones, the more I'm like going, wow, she pulls it. Her and Fraser Hines are given the hard part of playing stupid.
Yes,
you know what I mean? And not coming off as, oh, I don't know what this is, and wanting to know, giving the Doctor to, okay, now he can, ask the question. In Star Trek, Chekhov always has to do it. It's ask the question, what is it? And it's like this. They're like Maureen O'Brien, I think, when it comes to their character. With the level of the acting of their character. It's because the more I watch her, to get back to the rescue, is how good an actress she is. When I first heard that story of her saying, why do you, with the brunette, dye your hair remark, I was like, okay, I can see that in Vicki. I think that's a little okay, because she's no nonsense.
Yeah, I also think by the time we get Vicki, I think the production team and David Whittaker, because of course he was the outgoing producer.
Is this his last
He was
one?
the outgoing script editor. Well, no, this is his first one as an independent contractor. So he submits this story after his last job as script editor on Dalek Invasion of Earth. But what they've learned is where they went wrong with Susan.
Yeah,
and they've learned from the mistakes that they made. And I don't think any of that really is Carol Ann Ford's fault because she is spectacular when she's given the right material.
She's amazing.
The trouble is, she very rarely was given the right material. And so majoritively people's memory of her is that she's very screamy and a bit pathetic, I think. I don't think that's unfair to say.
No, there's a lot of damsel in distress writing of that character, which is so unnecessary to telling the story. It's but when she's really good in Dalek Invasion from Earth.
She's great in the first couple of episodes of The Censorites. She's magnificent.
Oh yeah, she's good in the pilot and the first. She's given some glitchy speeches. That's not her. There's a speech, or her talking about they're from another time, another place, and I think it's in the pilot. It's a good thing she got another take at it. But
yes, but she is very ethereal and wispy in the way that she comes across. There's something hard to pin down on her. She is alien. In a very similar way to Tom Baker. You watch Tom Baker and he's a human being, but as the role as the Doctor, you are utterly convinced he's an alien. Carol Ann Ford does a very similar thing in An Unearthly Child.
I wish they had let her
for the
continue
first
that.
episode. Yes, absolutely, but something got away from them. But with Vicki is a much more consistent and much more consistently written character throughout her time, which plays to her strengths as a strong actor as well. She's given good stuff and she's given good stuff to act and she acts it well. Carol Ann Ford was not given good stuff to act and she acted the best she could, but you can tell her heart's not in it sometimes because she knows the shit she's been given to perform. Like Reign of Terror, I just don't.
What the fuck, man? I was thinking about that when I was talking about that she's given some bad stuff to do, and that is,
That's the most egregious, I think.
yeah, it is. That's almost as bad as Mind Warp is to Perry.
Yeah.
And just why are you writing this shit? Why would you even give this to one of your stars? They're the heroes.
You can tell.
They make her a victim in that the whole time through. It was awful.
And people do complain about large supporting casts being present a lot of the time in Doctor Who. You look at seasons 19 and 20, that gets a lot of stick for not having stuff for all of the companions to do. Rightly so, because they just introduced Nyssa, even though she wasn't actually meant to be a recurring character or a companion initially. She was a one-off character, but they liked her. So they brought her in, but then they gave her nothing to do for like whole stories at a time.
Her first 2 stories, she doesn't really do much, does she?
She sleeps all the way through Kinder because there wasn't enough time to figure in what she was going to do.
And she still got paid for it.
And she still got paid for it because she turns up at the beginning and at the end. But those middle couple of episodes, no Nyssa. And so there are complaints about Ensemble's cast being given not a lot to do at certain times. And I think Reign of Terror is Susan's time to be put on the shelf and gone, I don't know how I'm going to fit this character into this story that I'm telling.
Do they ever
and that's unfortunate.
Do they ever do that to Vicki?
No, not
She's
really.
actually a little more front and center than Ian and Barbara at times in some stories.
Well, she kind of starts to take over from Ian and Barbara as your main companion, I think. And that's where they clearly then, by the time we hit the 70s, the Doctor is a doctor and a young female companion. But it's Vicki that starts that trend. Yeah. Absolutely. You can't say that for Susan.
Because it's the economy of it. All I need to do is get 2 people who have good chemistry together. And then sometimes later producers want to do types. You know, I want this type, I want that type. And they always do it. And then it's like, stop doing it. You're not real. Just, you know, like the Third Doctor's companions are all creatures of that. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
Super intellectual, now you're just his companion. Spy girl, now you're just his companion. Feminist journalist, now you're just his, you know, they have different personalities, but they come in as a type that, and they never really, and then Mel's the worst. You give her a profession, you state it, it's something that would be useful in a science fiction story, and then you never use it. And never use it. It's like,
at least Sarah Jane gets to be a journalist.
Yeah, see, that's what I always found about Mel so funny is, there are reasons to use her profession in this story.
I think she identifies the megabyte modem, and that's about it. But that's for a whole different story in episode review.
Oh my God.
I like that Mel, now that she's been brought back, is actually giving a chance to show off the fact that she does understand computers. At least they've given her that.
Yeah, I thought of that in the third special when she's there and talking things with Donna. I like that a lot because it was nice to see Bonnie Langford play older Mel too, have her come back.
Bonnie Langford's incredibly good at what she does.
She is a professional. It's like me and Vic have been talking for years. She is the epitome of a professional actor. I come prepared. I give you 110%. You're happy with my work, and then I move on to my next job.
Yeah.
She still does some musical. If she's still doing Chicago, which is the calisthenics of it, it's a Bob Fosse dance choreography, and it's really difficult. And she's probably still doing it. And
she probably could still do it.
She's a little bit. Yeah. I think she's maybe a year older than I don't know. She can't be much older than me.
No.
I'm 60 in 2 months.
I mean, she has been around in the public consciousness for a long time.
Yeah, because she was a kid,
a child actor.
Yeah, and she was just barely 20 when she was on Who, right?
Very young, yeah.
Yeah.
Very young.
Yeah. she's that companion that I think we all wanted to love, and we were like going, she didn't get a lot to do. But I do like her. I'm brain farting. One of her early McCoy ones. She's very good in it. I'm brain farting. But let's finish up about the rescue. Okay, Jeff, is this your favorite Doctor Who, or is Ghost Monument? Because we've talked about them back to back. Or they equally just orbit each other?
For me, they fit together like a comfy set of slippers. They go hand in hand. That's gloves, not slippers. But you know what I mean. Yeah. They are very simple, concise stories, but they do a lot in them, and they form bonds, and they're about finding family and finding escape from a situation that you do not want to find yourself in. And so they both speak to me on a very personal level to that end. It is about finding a home where you don't have one anymore. You may have had one, but you no longer do. And in the Ghost Monument, we see that our companions get ripped away from their lives and placed on a planet that could kill them at a moment's notice, that is utterly lethal to them. And then even the Doctor gets her moment when the TARDIS arrives. So there's a beautiful sort of through sense through both of these stories, and they both stand out to me. Are either of them my favourite Doctor Who story? If I was to look at Doctor Who at a whole and what it does, that's probably still Terror of the Zygons, if I'm honest.
Another one of those near perfect ones.
Yeah, it just does everything that it's meant to do, and it does it with style and aplomb, and I love it. But I think for stories that speak to me on a deeper level, I think these two are pretty much inseparable now. I think The Rescue holds a very special place in my heart and has done since I was 14. And The Ghost Monument has done since it aired, and it's probably the modern Doctor Who story I've rewatched the most. Yeah. So that I think speaks volumes, and they go really well together.
They do. I agree, because I always thought it was I thought it was neat that these two were important to you, because it is about forming the bonds and or seeing the with the fam is how deep the bonds have been. They were starting to form in the other story, but how deeper they come when you put it in another adventure together. And these are about the characters, and I think they're two simple stories. And I like it when it's, just keep it to what you need. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just because, especially with The Rescue, it is just there is no fat on it. It is everything works together. The guest he's great. So, and I really love the cast of Ghost Monument.
I think The Rescue would probably be the first classic story I would recommend to someone that wanted to go, that is a modern fan that wants to go back and look at Doctor Who.
It's the closest to the traditional 45-minute episode for an hour of television.
Yeah,
and that and when they would say, "Oh, the Doctor won't work in outside of the 28-minute serial," it's like, well, no, you've done stuff. You've done 2 and 3 parters, which is just really a regular television show.
And people also forget that in the 80s we were getting 45-minute episodes.
Yeah.
Because we were getting 2 episodes cut together, basically.
Yeah.
And then very hastily cut in the middle for overseas transmissions.
That make Jeff, they make no sense. It's awful.
No, I know.
It's jarring. It's like, what the fuck? He was in the middle of a line. No, it's not. It's near as bad as some of the dodgy omnibus edits they did, with War Games, where in the old days you'd have a scene at the end of an episode, and then we'd reshoot that same scene for the beginning.
Yes, yeah.
And there are times in the omnibus version of the War Games where you see both of those scenes back to back. And you're like,
oh my god!
All right,
That's
Jeff.
so weird.
It is weird. All right, folks. Thanks, Jeff, for coming on. I love talking the rescue. I definitely was. I was like, I saw that these Ghost Monument were back to back, and I wanted to hear you because I do love it. I think I came to love Maureen O'Brien more and more, like in COVID after the tweet on the Twitch and that huge reevaluation of the first Doctor, and to see, wow, they really were hitting it dead on in the early days. They had, there are times in the show where the history of the show, they go up and down with matching up actors. You're never going to get it right all the time. But this is a long stretch. I mean, all the way up through Vicky's leaving. It's a great. But then, it's near perfect cast.
Vicky leaves, and then we get the Daleks master plan. And I know people aren't mad keen on Dodo. I think Dodo is seen in a lesser light than Susan even. But I love Dodo, and I think Jackie Lane's great.
I like Dodo, and it's that thing. It's when you give her something to do, she's good.
Yeah,
You don't,
if you give her clear instruction about what accent to use as well, that helps. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that happens more often than not. There's the Kevin Costner Robin Hood. You can see that what scenes they shot first because he's doing a really bad English accent, and then it's just not in the rest of the movie. It's because someone announced it, but just stop.
People forget that yes, actors have a voice, and actors are there to bring something to life, but they're also there to follow the instructions from the people paying them to act in something. I think Anthony Ainley is the greatest example of the difference between his performances in, say, Traken and Legopolis to where he then would go to later on during the Davison and Baker eras, where he's being told to maximum overblow this to the nth degree, go full panto villain, and then you see him in Survival, and it's a much more considered and quieter and more sinister approach to his performance.
Oh yeah.
And you can see how good Anthony Ainley is and always has been in something like Survival, but he was just never given that clear instruction as to what they wanted, or he was given too clear instruction as to
like
what
a good
they
actor,
wanted.
like a very professional actor.
And I think that speaks to Carol Ann Ford, that speaks to Jacqueline Lane, that speaks to a lot of performances we've seen in Doctor Who over the years, where the actor is just doing what they've been told, and it's not on them.
Yeah. Oh no. Sometimes it's like actors that I've got to say these words and I don't understand them, or I don't get what you're going, but I got to say these lines. So
it's the famous quote to George Lucas, isn't it? George, you can write this shit, but you can't say it.
Yeah, they're not wrong. All right. So Jeff, where can people find you on the interwebs?
I am City of _Jeff on what remains of the once was beloved Twitter. I'm on Blue Sky, and I'm popping up on podcasts left, right, and centre these days. Trap 1 has launched today that we're recording this. So what's that? Saturday, the 7th of September already. Blimey. I've done Doctor Who literature with Jason. That came out last week, and that was also on The Rescue. So if you want to hear me say more about The Rescue, please do check that out. I've done What's in the Box with Jim Allenby. I've done The Library of Impossible Things with Cy Hart, and I'm sure many more to come.
Mm-hmm. There's always more Doctor Who to talk about. All right, folks. Jeff, thank you for being on. And folks, as always, thank you for listening. And we look forward to seeing you somewhere in time or